ghost, demon, evil, fiend. People think that these things are just in stories, and in reality, nothing like this exists. What a stupid thought. You just don't get it. I go by F2C, and I will remove all your misconceptions by my true and terrifying real stories based on true life incidents of horror and fear on my channel, Anubis Tales. Anubis Tales will make you face the real fear, which will leave you in shock. Today's true story is titled Our Encounter with the Familiar. In Argentina, there is an evil and very scary being that normally has the shape of a giant dog. The Argentines call him many different things. Familiar dog, lobezón, or the Familiar. It's been almost 4 years, and before I forget the details, I want to tell you what happened to me. I was 15 years old and summer vacation had just started. My cousin, who had recently turned 18, had a new motorcycle, a large one that his parents gave him for his birthday. We were more than cousins, we were very good friends. We used to go fishing often, but always close to home. However, when he received his new motorcycle, we planned to go fishing further as soon as the holidays begin, and that's what we did. We left in the afternoon planning on having a barbecue, and we decided to go to the banks of the Saule River, in the part located at the end of the Leals County. There are no lights there, not even on the route near the river. Almost no one goes there, which makes it an excellent place to fish in peace. We took everything we needed to spend a nice afternoon and stay until night. I remember that while we were eating, a big dog came to play with us, probably because of the smell of the meat, so while we ate, we gave him the bones and the leftover meat. At the end of our meal, and while we were preparing to fish, we talked about the dog. Since while we came down the road, we did not see any houses near the place. Although there is always some hidden houses in there, it's normal in the field. However, I decided to call her Clara, and once we had finished, I would take her home. Everything was starting to get dark, and we started fishing. Then, Clara started crying a lot, and she got between our legs. She was terrified. The night was very dark and calm, so it was very rare that the dog was scared. At times, Clara barked as if some larger animal was stalking her. I started to get scared since maybe some big animal was close to us. So I started stroking Clara to reassure her. My cousin turned on the flashlight that we brought and shined it around to see what the dog was afraid of. The second I turned on the flashlight, my cousin told me, "John, look at that dog." I was relieved to hear that it was only another dog that was scaring Clara. But I looked at where my cousin was shining his flashlight and I couldn't see anything. "Where is it?" I asked my cousin. He was trembling and answered that I was under the tree that he was shining the light on and that I should look behind me because it seemed that the dog had big red eyes. I took a good look and my cousin was right. He did have big red eyes. I thought it was because the light hit the dog's eyes just the right way, but I asked my cousin what we should do. "Let's go home, now," he said to me with fear in his voice. I asked him to shine the light so I could pack our things quickly. I finished grabbing everything, including my rod, but my cousin's rod was still quite far from us. We were afraid to pick up the cane. My cousin was lighting the way and I couldn't help but turning my head to see the dog. And when I saw him, I realized that he was very big, and even in the dense darkness of the night, those red eyes almost seemed to shine in the distance. We got to where the cane was. We picked it up and my dog kept crying. When we started walking towards the motorcycle, Clara started to bark. "John, look at the dog, it's behind the motorcycle. It's so big." I looked scared and I was paralyzed to see that it started to move. What horrified me most were those intensely red eyes. To our relief, the dog went down a path that entered a reed bed near the route we came from. We barely stopped. Clara saw him running after an animal until she got lost in the reed bed. As soon as we stopped seeing her, it sounded as if they were hitting her non-stop. My cousin started the motorcycle, and before we started, we saw him running towards us. I asked my cousin to wait a bit, that he would take me to Clara. I was very loaded with things, however, I didn't mind leaving much of what we had if it meant we could rescue Clara. My cousin, who was very scared, told me that we would return another way, that he had no intentions of going by the cane fields, and I told him that I didn't either. While we returned, we began to see more cane fields around and some old large machines. Now that I think about it, even if nothing had happened that night, the environment was very dark and very mysterious. I clearly remember that the motorcycle stopped near an old industrial scale, and things got even worse. The motorcycle died. We couldn't even turn the lights on. Then we heard very clearly how they used the scale and walked around it as if somebody was working in the dead of night. Then Clara began to cry again. I thought this nightmare would never end. So I told my cousin to push the motorcycle since in the distance you could see something similar to a bus stop. We were terrified, and we pushed that motorcycle as fast as we could, thinking that any moment we'd see that huge dog with the red eyes again. When we got to the bus stop, we tried to start the motorcycle again, and success! We were able to do it, and we left as quickly as we could. Signs were indicating that in a short time we'd arrive at the crossroads, and that gave us great relief. The surprising thing was that the cane fields did not end yet, and every few miles we still saw those old and large machines. When we were about to reach the end of the reeds, the motorcycle stopped again, and without hesitation, we pushed the motorcycle out of there. While we were pushing the motorcycle, we heard a strange howl very close. It was like the howl of an old and sick dog. It was insanely stressful, and when the howling stopped, you could hear footsteps through the reed bed. I'm sure that huge dog was watching us, and I was sure he would until we left that place. We finally managed to get out of that place, and as soon as we did, my cousin tried to start the motorcycle one more time, and it turned on the first attempt. We got on the motorcycle and quickly went to the city. It was already dawn. When we got home, it was almost 7 a.m. Despite how tired we were, fear did not let us rest easy. My cousin went home, and for weeks we talked about what happened to us that night with the family. Everyone told us that the familiar had been presented to us, and that the only reason we made it out of there was because it was almost dawn. As for my cousin, he noticed that since that night his motorcycle malfunctioned and stopped often, so he traded it for another one just like it, and he never had any more problems. Clara stayed with me, and I took good care of her. She played all day. She walked and ran badly. Apparently one of her legs was badly injured, and every time it got dark, she stayed inside the house until the sun came up. Sometimes she cried, but I would bring her into my room and she'd calm down, sleeping next to my bed. My house has a large piece of land in the back, and the grass grows so fast and I rarely have time to cut it, so it's normal for the grass to be overgrown. One day, Clara went out to play just like usual, but at nightfall, she didn't return home. I looked all over for her. Even just the other day, I looked for her again, and I expected her to return at dusk, but she didn't return. I very sadly assumed that she was lost or stolen because she was such a great dog. Before finishing the holidays, I decided to cut the grass behind my house. It took a good few hours until I could finish. When the grass gets that high for a long time, sometimes my family likes to throw their garbage in there. However, It was very strange to find an old washing machine, and when I saw it, I had a horrible feeling. It reminded me of the machines we saw that night. I went up to it to see how to get it out of there, and when I tried to turn it over, I heard how something moved inside. With a lot of force, I managed to open it, and then I started to cry. And I cried a lot. I once again felt more scared and watched as that night, because when I opened the washing machine, I saw that my Clara had died, and her body was dry. It was only skin and bones, and her eyes were completely undone. Sometimes I think Clara was like this as a result of that night. That night when we saw the familiar. And this happened in 2014 in Leals, Tucumán, Argentina. That's it for today. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and click the like button and subscribe to the channel so we can do this again sometime. For Anubis Tales, I'm F2C. Farewell.